Hello, I'm Marc Wilson. I'm here at Rock City Park, which is located just south of Olean, New York, on Route 16 near the Pennsylvania state line. The timber rattlesnake is believed to be non-existent in this area. I've lived in this immediate area for my entire life, and I've never seen one around here, nor do I know of anybody who has. The southern tier in western New York is actually on the outskirts of its domain. A 20-minute drive south into Pennsylvania is where occasional rattlesnake sightings begin. I don't expect to find any rattlesnakes here today, but since this area is close to home, I figured that it would be a good place to start investigating what should be pristine rattlesnake habitat. The park is a very scenic and beautiful place. If there aren't any rattlesnakes to be found here today, it will still be a pleasant afternoon and well worth the modest price of admission. The park is entered from the southernmost end of its main rock formation. Looking north from the top of its surface, you can see that this area is very open and vast. At one time, this was one large mass of solid conglomerate rock. Over thousands of years, it has slowly cracked into several smaller but still massive portions. You will see numerous gaps where the pieces have gradually settled into the earth and slightly spread apart. This stairway is one of two ways to access the main trail that follows the base of the main rock formation. It's amazing how much cooler the air temperature is down here after being up there in that hot sun. It's almost like Mother Nature turned on the air conditioning. The narrow pass ahead is called Fat Man Squeeze. This is definitely not anywhere you want to be if you're claustrophobic. These walls are only about 18 inches apart. When we get to the end, there's a few steps to get down before we get to the main trail. The first thing I see directly in front of me is a tunnel that goes through the rock formation. The light at the end of the tunnel is probably 25 to 30 feet away. It's really too dark in here to see anything. To the left, we have a crevasse. And to the right, we have the main trail. This is the point at which the true beauty of this place really begins to start showing. I'm just below the steps on the main trail looking around. You can see there's lots of hiding places in here. Lots of cracks and crevices. This is a pretty awesome place. Good scenery. Just take a sweep around. This is the area called Dining Hall Pass. Just a quick sweep around to see what we have here. This is really cool. We've got kind of a rock bridge that goes through another tunnel, a little bigger here. I'll look up the trail where I just came from. Them rocks go a long way up. This is the southernmost end of the rocks that I'm standing at. Here's a quick sweep around. This area is bustling with chipmunk activity. I see a very abundant source of small game for rattlesnakes to feed upon. The timber rattlesnake is one of 3 lethally venomous species of snake found in New York State. Since they are protected here, it's illegal to kill them. If one is encountered, I hope to record it on video from a safe distance by zooming a camera in on it. A rattlesnake has a strike radius of roughly 2/3 of its body length. Since I'm not a licensed or trained snake handler, there's no intention of getting close enough to get bitten by one. There are several of these smaller rock formations directly to the southwestern side of the main rock formation. Some of these are off of the main trail. There's a lot less human activity here with plenty of chipmunks and birds. This is an area where I'd expect better odds of encountering a snake. This underground opening is directly below the westernmost end of the main rock formation. This is called the Bear's Den. It's not obvious how deep this goes or what creatures may inhabit it. A rattlesnake needs a den where it can hibernate and survive the winter. There are several openings here at the park which could potentially lead to an underground chamber. If the pocket is far enough below the frost line, the temperature of the earth is roughly 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Since the temperature inside the den is warmer than the outside temperature above ground and heat rises, the colder temperature will be kept out. Rattlesnakes tend to return to the same den every year and usually don't venture more than a couple miles away from it. The dens are often shared with other species of snakes as well. The oil industry boomed in the southern tier from the late 1800s through the early 1900s. This old drilling rig is nearly a century old and has been abandoned for quite some time now. It's a relic that reminds us of what this area once was. It's located at the westernmost corner of the park, just below the main rock formation. Encounters between timber rattlesnakes and mankind in the wild are very rare, even in areas where they are more densely populated. The timber rattler is very docile and meek. If walking with heavy feet and making a lot of noise, they will usually detect what they perceive as a threatening presence and be scared off long before they are ever seen. As you will see, there are plenty of cracks and crevices here for any snake to quickly disappear into. In the early 1970s, I was just a toddler. My family lived on Green Street, which is just a few miles down the hill in Olean. My Uncle George was a teenager. He had a small rattlesnake that he kept in an aquarium in his bedroom for a while until he eventually got caught and was forced to get rid of it. Since he didn't have a driver's license, we believed that he found it somewhat locally. Although I was way too young to actually remember it, a lasting impression still may have been left by it. This is the other stairway available to access the base of the main rock formation from its surface. These are called the Indian Stairs. These are located at the easternmost end of the main rock formation, hidden along the fence line. They're easiest to find if entering the main trail through Fat Man Squeeze. These would actually be at the very end of the main trail tour. If you are uncomfortable in tight places, this might be a better option to both begin and end a tour below the upper surface of the main rock formation. This is a quick view of the main trail just below the Indian Stairs and around the corner. This is actually my favorite part of the trail. It's almost like standing outside the walls of a great castle. To really appreciate the beauty of this place, you physically need to be here. This video will close with some additional photographs of the park. The limited amount of photographs and video footage in this final video is really just the beginning. There is far more here to see. This is just a look a little bit further down the trail from that last video segment. The fallen log on the trail ahead raises a red flag. Like rocks, fallen logs absorb heat from the sun. This makes them another popular place for rattlesnakes to lie. It's also a good vantage point to hunt from. Rattlesnakes are ambush predators. Their natural camouflage blends in well with this environment. They often lie upon logs like this, waiting for smaller creatures to approach on the ground to prey upon for an easy meal. This tactic is much like that of an archery hunter who climbs up a tree and waits in a tree stand for a deer to pass on the trail below. There might not be any obvious rattling sounds at this moment, but that doesn't mean there isn't a snake here. I'll watch every step that is made very carefully and approach with caution. They will only rattle if they detect a presence that they find threatening. Here's a quick tip when flipping over logs and rocks when in snake country. Perhaps you're just looking for some worms to use for bait to go fishing. Always roll the log or the rock directly towards you. If there happens to be a snake underneath it, then there will be a barrier in between you and the snake. If it gets spooked, it'll most likely just wiggle on away from you. If you roll the log or the rock directly away from you instead, that means the snake will be in between you and it. The snake will be more likely to feel cornered and strike out at you in self-defense. Also, you're going to be physically closer to the snake when this mistake is made. Lastly, it's much wiser to use some form of a tool to flip over the log or the rock whenever possible, instead of placing your fingers underneath it to get a grip on it. Don't look like I'm going to find any snakes here today. Okay, I have found a few small snakes, but they're probably garter snakes. They're only about 4 or 5 inches long. They move so quick that it's hard to get a shot of them on video. Okay, there it is in the center of the screen. I don't know what kind it is, but I'm not going to mess with it. Rule of thumb, if you don't mess with it, you can't get bit. When it comes to rattlesnakes, the smaller they are, the more dangerous they are. This is a view of the top surface of the main rock formation looking westward from its easternmost end. This is near the top of the Indian Stairs. These rocks receive a lot of direct exposure to the sun and will remain warm for quite some time even after it goes down. Snakes don't necessarily like basking in the sun, but they do like the heat that it provides. Since they are cold-blooded creatures, they are reliant upon this heat to speed up their metabolism. They often lie upon warm rocks to help them digest a recent meal. Pregnant females are also known to lie upon warm rocks. This area is very easy for them to access. The problem is that there is way too much human activity here. The one thing that this park lacks is an open water source, but that isn't necessarily an important part of a rattlesnake's habitat. Snakes as a whole are easier to find near water because the smaller creatures that they feed upon are generally more abundant around it. Where there are more creatures for them to prey upon, the snakes will also be more plentiful. As expected, no rattlesnakes were found here today. But I've seen enough evidence to be convinced that the species probably did thrive here at one time. The problem is that the timber rattlesnake and mankind do not coexist well together. We have a natural tendency to both hate and fear them, and also to feel threatened by their existence. Although protected, many of us will still needlessly kill them anyway out of that same hatred and fear. The video will close with some additional photographs of the park. My search will continue at Allegheny State Park, which is located about 15 miles west of here, and also along the Pennsylvania state borderline. I'm Marc Tex Wilson. Thanks for watching.